It's more interesting than that, and I'll be honest. I had a big frustration with when I went to Pilates, because they're like, well, just think about it and sit up straight and swing your arms, and I'm like, I can't. I literally can't. And so what I would do is, to try and do what they said, I would tense. And it's just, I mean, if I track it, I had that growth for 6 years. So everything was being compromised for 6 years, and other things took over. So it's just going to take a little time, but it's fascinating. So we're going to start with the front page, and I want you to make a note on the front page to add your 5-count breathing. Otherwise, it's just stretching. Adding the breath is what makes this into Qigong. Because Qi is energy, Gong is work. You are not doing energy work without breathing and activating that. That being said, there are Qigongs that are not in rhythm with your breath. I mean, you're still breathing deeply, but your movements don't have to be in time with your breath, and you're doing more visualization of moving the energy through. But if there is no breath, there is no Qi. And thinking about sciatica, particularly in my industry, we will have whole discussions about how sciatica can be from an emotional root. Not all sciatica, and when we turn the page, we'll see why. And I'm actually jumping ahead of myself a bit. Stress. And I'm laughing because we just had I had the whole conversation with the PT the other day. The first thing she had me do was abdominal breathing. Because she says if you're not doing abdominal breathing, these muscles get tense, and you're actually putting yourself into a state of fight or flight. And so not only could you be causing upper body pain, because you're using these small muscles up here because of tension, but also your nervous system being in a state of fight or flight is going to cause muscles to be tense. And that's why when you understand what muscles cause sciatica in the lower body, when you're in a state of fight or flight, these are the muscles that help you run. And so as massage therapists, we'll talk about, okay, we'll massage them, we'll ask our clients to breathe, and there'll be this big and even this adrenaline rush or emotions that come out, because historically, you know, when we weren't living in houses and stuff, if we were scared, we would run. We would have to run away from like a predator or prey or chase. And honestly, we'd get all that adrenaline out of our body. Now that we're in an office building, our body will be dumped with adrenaline, and we'll just go, and your body is ready to run, so all this tension can be stored in those muscles ready to run, and you don't go anywhere. So if you stretch, you need to breathe to tell your nervous system to relax. So you have to sit there and do your abdominal breathing so your shoulders drop, so you can feel this, and then that breathing will also help to interrupt that muscle spasm or that clenching, that fight or flight readiness. Now, the PT I'm doing now, just as a reference, again, to show the Eastern-Western connection here, she has me lay down and do deep breathing and tense one muscle, and I can then feel all the muscles are clenched on my left side. And I have to sit there and breathe, and she puts me in a particular position so I can feel it until they relax. And we get them all to turn off. And then I get up, and then I limp, because now I have to use my right side.
Oh, I was wondering how she got your body to turn off.
Yeah, breathing.
Yeah.
Just breathing. But because, but she's having me work with deep abdominal muscles that are helping hold me up. And as soon as we activated those, then I could feel everything else going down my leg. And I can always knew that this side was tight, but I would sit there and just massage them. But no, we're turning all this off just with breathing. So that breathing is the key to, when you feel those muscles tight, breathe into them to interrupt that muscle spasm. If I go into Oriental medicine, the Qi rides on the breath. Where the breath goes, the blood goes. So just by breathing, you're bringing Qi into your body, and wherever the Qi goes, you'll get more blood flow. If there's blood there, the areas can relax and bring healing and nourishment. Does that correlate? It makes sense. So,
So did you write that somewhere?
No, this is me doing, all I said is breathe, and here's, this is all occurred to me as I was driving in today, that I needed to explain this, which is what the video's for, as well. And just things come out when I teach. So to go through the handout, the warm-up we did was swinging arms, which is that back and forth. We then rolled down the center line, and because I really wanted to work with sciatica that runs through the pelvis, that's why I had you do the psoas stretch afterwards, to stretch out that psoas in the pelvis in the front. I then had you reach up, hip hinge forward, keeping the back flat, the knees straight, put your hands on your knees and lift your toes. And could you feel that go all the way down the hamstrings and down the calves and down the back? That's going to be important. Now, reaching for heaven and earth, I did this. This is from Badwa Jin. I did this with the breath. You inhale, you reach up. You're going to be lifting the rib cage, opening up the diaphragm, which will help you breathe deeply, and extending the back. You exhale, you hip hinge forward, and you're reaching forward. You want to keep the legs straight. And then I just put transition because it happens so fast. You hip hinge forward, you come down, and then this is your lateral flexion, which means I'm going off my center line and twisting to the side, and you're going to be opening up all those attachments along your lumbar spine here. You go side to side. Then here's that part that we did in isolation, lifting the toes here and drop, and here's your rolling up the spine, and you can just do here and sometimes alternate, and I'll go here. Okay. Can you see how that's opening up the psoas here? And it's opening up your low spine here. And we'll be opening up the inside of your legs all the way down to the toes here. And it will open up your hamstrings and even down to the calves. But what we're missing is this motion. So when you turn the heels out and spreading the buttocks, that's what you're doing here. And again, I'm only going to do it with the one leg because it zings me pretty good. And then you can just breathe and relax here. That is what's written on your front page. And I told you, write down breathing. And that was my tangent of why you need to breathe. Chi flow, blood flow, relaxes the nervous system, takes you from a state of fight or flight. Now, how long does it take? You can go into fight or flight, which is called sympathetic. We'll do another one just on the nervous system later. You could go into fight or flight in an instant. You have to. You see a car coming at you. Your body will immediately go into fight or flight. It takes like 15 minutes for you to come out of that. That's why 15 minutes of breathing or a 15-minute massage is key. That's how long it takes to really... And it's hard to hold a stretch for 15 minutes. So if you're doing these, I would at least hold it for 4 or 5 breaths. If you can go longer, that's great. But if you can do these stretches and incorporate it with 15 minutes of breathing in one way or another, if you're moving other ways, that's going to be key to really clean out your nervous system. So you can do these stretches and then lay down on the ground and do your breathing, and then get up and do the stretch again. Okay? But when people talk about sciatica is caused by emotions, if you address the nervous system in this way, that's how you can address the emotions, because that's how you're going to clean out your nervous system. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes. Okay. Because sometimes you'll do the stretch and you're like, it's not working. Well, it's because you're still clenching. So breathing is how you overcome the clenching. All right, let's see, there's page 2. I want to come back to page 2 because I want to explain the muscles first. So let's actually just flip to page 3, which is this one with all the muscles. This is so you can visualize what's actually going on with sciatica. So, and I'll turn this out so you can follow. This picture right here. That's what we're going to start with, the one with the blue background. Spinal nerves. Now, any time it says L, that means lumbar. Those are all the the vertebrae directly beneath your ribs, the really big ones. S means sacrum. What is your sacrum? It's this piece in between your hips. Okay? So when it says L4, L5, that's your lumbar, L4, L5. And then the S is sacrum, S1, S2, S3. So this is where tracking the nervous system can be difficult, is that it's not, it starts here and it ends here. You see these nerves start at L4, L5, S1, 2, and 3. They all start as individual nerves, and then they go and merge into the sciatic nerve. And then later down your leg, your sciatic nerve breaks apart again. Oh. And I think your body does that as insurance sometimes to like mix it. So if one nerve gets cut, and you've got backup nerves that will still do a certain job. And I didn't put this in here, but you can make a note. There are sensory nerves, and there are motor nerves. Sensory nerves feel things. Motor nerves move things. And we'll just put a tack in that for later, because it's another discussion. So when you're doing these stretches, you can see that we were working L4, L5, and even down to the S1. So I mean, this one's going to be opening up the back from side to side. Your spinal roll forward and backwards is going to be working that L4, L5. Okay. Now the next muscle we'll look at is piriformis. So look at the one with the black background. And I like this picture because, honest to God, if you look at several of the others below it, this picture shows that this piriformis muscle goes, here's your tailbone, it attaches underneath the tailbone. See how it goes to the inside?
So we're looking at the back.
Yep, that's your back.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm. The one with the blue, you're looking at the front. This is a front view. The one in the back, the one that's black, is back. And that psoas muscle goes and attaches to the inside of your sacrum.
The piriformis. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, because stuff will start.
Okay.
That one.
Yeah.
And a lot of pictures, I couldn't tell that. I thought it attached on the outside here. It attaches on the inside. Why that's significant is what's on the inside? My uterus. At least mine was, because mine was flipped backwards. And other things that could be going on in your pelvis. That's significant for certain things that we're going to talk to of what can cause sciatica. Now, if you look to these two photos on the side, I cut them in half so you would be able to see them. So these two right here. Because you can see how the sciatic nerve moves underneath the piriformis. But you can see how one it moves underneath and the other one, the nerve goes through it. That only happens in 10% of the population. But in 10% of the population, that sciatic nerve goes through the piriformis, and they're going to get sciatica anytime that muscle is tense at all.
Back?
Yes, that is the back. Mm-hmm.
Both of these.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's me.
Yep. So it's this one that's tied on you? Do you think? Probably back there? It's actually, if I may, down here. If you're feeling it up there, it might be lumbar, but we'll talk about it. But yeah, in 10% of the population, if you look right here, that sciatic nerve goes right through that muscle. So anytime that muscle gets tense, that nerve gets pinched. So I'm saying that to say this. Everyone's body is different. Even though you look at a diagram, that doesn't mean that's your physiology. Just like uterus. Mine and my mom's uterus was tipped towards this sacrum. And all those nerves that are trying to move through the body, through this abdominal cavity, or this lower cavity, and moving down. And that makes a difference. So this right here of the legs, this is also looking at you from the back. And you see this big white space right here. And these muscles, I'm going to draw on it right here. These muscles right here, those are your hamstrings. And you can see how the sciatic nerve runs underneath your hamstrings. That's why I tell you to stretch your hamstrings. Is because we're elongating that whole area. Yep, and so these right here. All the way up, and see how they attach to the sacrum? All the way up. Now, if the legs are straight, you're going to stretch the attachments right back here and down the legs. If the knees are bent, you're not going to be stretching them. You can, it's easier to reach your toes, but you won't be stretching that muscle. So you have, I think after this, a good visual that the sciatic nerves leave that the lower lumbar, L4, L5, and the sacrum. They merge into the sciatic nerve. The sciatic nerve then needs to, if you look at the one, this black one, go underneath that piriformis muscle and loop over the bone. No issue there where it might get pinched, and then run down the back of the leg.
So did you say the piriformis goes through the sciatic nerve goes through the piriformis and the hamstrings?
Yeah, because it's coming down here, and then the hamstrings, and then it's, so here's the piriformis right here.
Okay.
See how it goes underneath, and then it goes right beneath the hamstrings there. Yep, so here's the piriformis right here, and it comes underneath and runs right down the hamstrings.
Okay.
Here's
So
the
either
piriformis. Yep.
Underneath their piriformis or through it 10%.
In 10%, it does that, which is nasty.
Okay.
And that's just to build your awareness of what's happening there. And then just be aware, if you look at the blue one, that, you know, those nerves go, this is if you're looking from the front. This blue one here, and you see how those nerves are leaving the spine, and your pelvis it's leaving the spine, and you can see the sacrum there, and then how it has to loop under the bone and then over that piriformis. And you have your uterus and your other internal organs sitting here, plus your psoas muscle. So things can be impinged on the inside, is the point.
Is this sciatica on both sides?
Yes, yes it is. They've actually it is. See, you see, they've just made it faint right here. Yep. Yes. So the times things are not bilateral on both sides of the body is organs, but the nerves should be bilateral on both sides. I can't think of a case where they're not. You have one on each side, unless you have something unique. If you turn the page 4, this is the sciatic nerve with all the muscles cut away, so you can just see how nice and long it is, and then how it branches out and becomes different pieces, but it goes all the way down to your foot. So when you said you hurt all the way down to your foot, and it goes down the back of the calf, so that's why when I have you, hip flex forward and lift the toes, you can feel it, that stretch all the way down the back of the legs. That's why you want to be stretching and opening that entire length. Now we're going to get into some nuances. So when you're ready, you can turn to page 5. I'm going to grab a little water for myself. What causes sciatica? And I looked this up. One of them, they say lumbar spine stenosis. And that's this first one right here. What happens is you've got your lumbar, you've got the spine, and then you have the canal that the nerve runs through, your spinal cord. That spinal cord, how did they say it? Narrowing of the spinal canal. It is a canal. If that canal narrows, basically that whole nerve is starting to get weak, and the area that's running through is starting to narrow and become small. I've only had one client who had this, and he comes in, I have back pain, and so I'm sitting here, I'm massaging him, and I do my normal, cross and do a stretch, and And he goes, and then he comes back and says, I went to the doctor, I have spinal stenosis. He says, don't do that anymore, this cross stretch, because my spine is so narrow it could tear, and then I'll be paralyzed. I went, oh, well, so I've only seen it once. So the reason why I'm saying this is that sciatica can start all the way up there. And sometimes you do need to go to the doctor and get a specific diagnosis. But usually you can tell by the amount of pain they're in. The next one that's a lot more common is degenerative disc. And so that's this next picture next to it. So if you look at this picture, the disc above it says healthy disc. You see how much space is there? What it is your vertebrae is bones, and it has cushion between each of the bones. And when that cushion is there, that's what gives the nerve space to leave in between the bones. And the bones are there to protect the spinal canal that comes down in the middle of it. So that, you want bones around your nerves so they don't break when people hit you. That's the purpose of your spine. But it has cushion in between cartilage, like your nose, and it gives it space for the nerves to leave. Well, if that cartilage starts to degenerate and go away, that space where the nerve leaves becomes smaller and smaller until the bone sits on the nerve. And that really hurts. So sometimes the flexion extension and things won't feel good because you're moving the bone and you flex or extend a certain way and the bone will pinch the nerve. In which case that flexion extension and even the psoas stretch, it's really not going to fix it. You need to do something else. So I'm doing this to build your awareness of if it's higher up, some of the other things aren't going to work. The other thing that can happen that isn't on here is the disc, because it's cartilage and it's got fluid inside, it can bulge out just one direction and pinch the nerve too. So bulging disc, and I don't have a picture of that on there. But again, it has to do with the disc hitting the nerve. And I don't see it in the younger populations typically, but I will see it in the older populations. It's something that becomes more and more common as you get older. Or my laborers, meaning my blue-collar workers, people who do a lot of lifting. And then the next one, spondylolisthesis, a condition where the vertebra slips. So let's just call it a slip vertebra. And basically, this is one with the blue discs, and it's got that red disc down there. And if you look, basically the back has broken and the whole spine has moved forward. That can also pinch a nerve and cause sciatica. So I typically run into people with degenerative discs and bulging discs. And honestly, the best thing for them is traction. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. But the most common is tension in those muscles. And so we'll go over that as well. But sometimes, you're going to sit there and say, hey, I've got some great stretches for sciatica. Why isn't this person getting better and why are they howling in pain? Well, it might be one of these other conditions. Especially the degenerative discs. It can make a big difference. Now, the other reason for sciatica, pregnancy. And that's that last photo. And I'm going to flip it around. You can see how the baby is going in there, and the nerves are green in that photo, and pressing right in along the sacrum. So, you're walking along, you're fine, and then the baby drops, and both your legs go to sleep. That's at least what happened with me, and it's because the baby drops and compresses that nerve, and you can't feel a thing. And then my trouble with my uterus, I find this article says, well, there was a woman who had sciatica, and she had an enlarged uterus, and we took it out and she got better. Maybe we should look into this. It's like, really, guys? And I get on the Facebook forum, and women are with the adenomyosis, which is when the uterus, it says it feels like you have a bowling ball inside you, and that was my feeling. It felt, my uterus was half a pound, and when I was, I'd get up in the morning, I would walk, and after 20 minutes, I'd feel this weight settle, and my leg would then go to sleep, like completely asleep. And like, this is not normal. But women will say it feels like there's a bowling ball pressing and sitting, much like a baby will. And mine, for whatever reason, went to the right. Women, if it's direct, I've had, some women just reading their posts, I'm up in the middle of the night, I have sciatic pain, I'm just crying. So they have, it's not in the lumbar, it's lower in the sacrum area, it's the uterus, and it's sitting on those nerves. So I want you to be aware as women that that's another thing that can happen, even when you're not pregnant. So the adenomyosis is the heavy uterus, but the other thing I was looking at is the endometriosis. When the cells grow outside the uterus, they can also grow into the sciatic nerve. And you would limp when you're on your period because they'd be swollen and bleeding internally, creating scar tissue. And then when you're off your period, they go more dormant and you can walk better. So not something I ever really saw in the textbooks, but because of this experience, if you go and read about it, it can happen because it's all in that area. So what can you do for sciatica? And this is the last page. It says, first understand where the sciatic nerve is being pinched. Is it in the lumbar spine? Is it in the pelvic cavity? Or is it this piriformis muscle in the back? Okay? If it's a spine impingement, you may need surgery. I've had 2 other cases where people had the spine, not a full spine break, but they had parts of it that were breaking. So one of them, I said, let's do swinging arms. And he says, it feels like I'm being stabbed with a knife. That's the kind of pain. And it was the bone digging into the nerve itself. Stop doing swinging arms. That's bad.
Which one is that?
It would be something like this. An actual break. So you can have cases where the bone has broken. My men, so far, usually they've. One of them had been crushed. He goes, yeah, they won't do surgery on me. I've got bone fragments just floating next to my spine. It was bad. So, or the discs, or the spinal canal itself degenerating. So I do say, talk to your doctor because some exercises may be contraindicated. What's most common is the bulging disc or degenerative disc, in which case it depends on which direction the bulge is going or the degeneration is going. That can pinch the nerve. But what I found with my clients who have degenerative discs is the flexion extension might hurt, but traction feels good. So elongating the spine. So I wanted to show what that looks like. Judy, can I have you lay on the floor? And on your back. So if you go to a chiropractor or physical therapy, go ahead and lay all the way down. What they will do is they'll take your legs and they'll do this.
That always feels good to me.
Yes, and what it is there's no flexion or extension, especially if you have a bulging disc. You know, like I said, that can hurt. But this traction and pulling feels real good. So ideally you get someone to like put a rope up in your house that you can like just loop your feet on and just let your feet dangle like this and then pull your, so instead of me pulling you this way, Judy, put your hands down to your side and like push your body away from me. Yep, and that creates the traction. You just get yourself at this angle. So I was experimenting it today. I could put my feet up on the steps and hook my feet on the edge of my steps in my house and push away and get some traction. You can do that, or on the edge of a couch. But can you feel that? That pulling in the spine? The other way you can do that without doing a lot of flexion extension, okay, is you let the lower body be heavy and you pull this way. And that also puts traction on my spine. So it's just pulling forward like I'm going to drag, and I can feel an elongation in my spine. So those are 2 alternatives. But they'll have traction machines at the doctor's office. I give traction to clients, and they'll talk. When you do traction, the key is to get the sway out of my spine. So I'm going to lay here and push this way, and I can just feel a little bit of a pull and an elongation to my spine. And I'll just lay like this. And that takes the pressure off the bulging discs, etc. Okay. So, nerve impingement okay, so the next part, because there's the 2 examples. So now I'm on this bullet point here. Nerve impingement due to tight muscles. You want to relax and open the muscles. Now remember, to relax and open the muscle, You get into a stretch and you breathe. So lower lumbar, if it's tight muscles along the lower lumbar that's catching the nerve, we did the flexion and breathing. You can do the extension and breathing. You can do the lateral rotation and breathing. You will see, well, let me just show you some other examples. Another way to do the spinal rotation, lay on the ground, knees to the side. You recognize this? Let's see, was there the other was spinal rotation. Spinal rotation, sitting or in a chair. And what you'll see in the other exercises, again, I don't want to open up this leg, but you can do your butterfly pose, have both feet here and one foot because, well, I'll get to this in a moment, but you can do your spinal rotation this way. Just what are the different exercises you can do where you can rotate your spine? Okay, to open that up. Now the piriformis muscle, lateral rotation of the hip. This is medial, this is lateral. So the piriformis helps you do this and helps you do this. That's why those heels are out. And when you do this, it feels short in here. When I take the heel out, I can feel it stretching open the buttocks. So this is the area where the nerve can be impinged. So for us, I was having you lean forward like this and push the buttocks back. Let me see. Abduction. I'll get to that in a moment. So it's the other motion it says is abduction with the knee bent. So here's your knee bent. Abduction is taking this out to the side. That also is going to stretch this piriformis. So that's why I don't want to bring that knee up. If both my feet work together, you can do the butterfly pose this way. You can lay down. You can put pillows underneath your knees and let them fall out and stretch this way. That will stretch the pelvis. Sitting cross-legged instead of sitting in a chair will also help open this up. So in massage school, we never used chairs. We had everyone sit on the ground and sit cross-legged to open that up. If you can't bend the one knee, you can do this one at a time. Let's see. Here and here. They said a lot of oh yeah, hugging the knees to the chest, but this is working the spine. But you can go here, it's going to stretch here, then out to the side. If you come up here, this is now your hamstrings that you're getting. They talk about thread the needle, this one. And you could do this laying down or you could do it sitting in a chair. That's going to get that same motion in there. And then I mentioned wall exercises. I'll come back to that in a moment. The key is to have your legs straight. The heater's kind of in the way. Stretches can be easier to hold sometimes if you want to do them for 3 to 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Let me hook this on. Now, I made a note on here about psoas. It says psoas is responsible for hip flexion. That's this motion or this motion. You know, this decrease the angle of a joint. When the psoas is tight, it pulls the lumbar vertebrae and can lead to tightness in a muscle, I haven't touched it yet, and strain in the piriformis here. So that's why I like stretching out the psoas, because the psoas, if it's tight, can affect the piriformis, and if the piriformis is tight, it can cause the sciatica. So, medical terminology. Do you need to run? Yep. chiropractor. No problem. I will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep, I got 3 more minutes left. Medical terminology, just so you know, adduction, think of it like adding, or abduction, like kidnapping, to be abducted by aliens or abducted by someone. What does that mean? Adduct, or to kidnap, it says to move away from the midline, like this. Adduct, to add to it, addition to. So this is taken away, this is to, and it can be the same for the legs. So taken away, you're kidnapping, or you're adding. It was always really difficult in school, so the teacher would say ADD or ABD, because abduct and adduct sound the same. Yeah. But it's, you know, abduction, to take away, to abduct, and adding to. Now, the reason why this is important is because it says piriformis muscle helps with, it says lateral rotation, this moving to the outside, but it also helps with abducting, taken away. So this moving this hip joint out here and here. So that's why sciatica, you have stretching the hamstrings, you have taken it out to the side to stretch, and you have your rotation to work that area at the hip. If it's stuck in the hip, and if it's stuck in the back, you're going to be working the back. So that's really the long and short of it all. Questions? Is that clear, or is it?
It's very helpful for some of the things I've gone through.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
And so you can customize it for yourself, because then go back all the way to page 2. These then exercises should make sense. These are not the exercises I showed today, but these are typical ones people will give. So one of them being child's pose. We were able to accomplish that by standing. There's one here that says stand and twist. I'm like, okay, so they're having you do this, which is getting that muscles working here. The cat-cow is going to be the flexion and extension of the spine. Hugging the knees, the twist from side to side, either with both legs or one leg at a time. This lunging twist, I should be able to do it. You see that in yoga. This one. But you see how you got that same angle. And then the seated twist with the legs open. I got to be honest with you, even with this, I mean, they're throwing a lot of the twists out here. I like the ones I taught you because they're straightforward, they're simple. But the black and white ones below, those ones I'm recognizing from like PT manuals, physical therapist manuals. And mine are still more dynamic. So that lay down butterfly. I do like the one leg stretch here, because you can stretch your leg here and you can pull in here, but then I would still take it out to the side to open that up more. But that's, I really like thread the needle. I'd circle number 9. Oops. And that's this one, because of, I can finally feel that right in here.
When I do that, put my hands around the knee, I feel a lot of tension in my shoulders.
Yeah, and that's something else is, the exercises I'm showing I really think are just very straightforward. You can do them if you're pregnant, you can do them in your office, and just having a clear understanding. So, yeah, incorporating the breath, knowing where the restriction is, and according to the restriction would be what exercise you emphasize. But particularly if it's psoas, that, and taking it out to the side. So, performance. Okay. Yeah, I just.
That's okay. I'm sure I understood.
Yep. Yeah, the psoas is going to be here to stretch, or here to shorten it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do need to shorten it too, if to take the pressure off of certain things. Okay, any questions?
No, it's just I've been thinking about my own body.
Mm-hmm.
You've been helpful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know what it is.
Which structure is being
I have
impinged?
so many things. I have this crooked foot,
Mm-hmm.
this bound up something here,
Okay.
and the hip mending thing with the rod.
Yes.
So I'm going to find someone, a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
who looks at the whole system, not just at my knee.
I have a good PT I can recommend. For that reason, when I went to the orthopedic, he referred me to PT because what he deals with as an orthopedic is things like this, degeneration, that you can see on an x-ray that you can fix with surgery.
I might have that, but I don't
That's true. And then, and again, he could see a lot of swelling in there, but nothing, and the tear, but not enough that you'd want to go in and fix. But as for the referred pain, I mean, you'll feel it all. I'm now thinking of my case. This will get tight right here because you've got the two bones and you got some soft tissue in between, and it starts to bind up and get tight. The bones should be soft and be able to articulate, but you have to grip the ground so hard to compensate for this. This gets tight. So I always have foot stiffness on this side and hamstring tightness because this is weak. So you might need surgery up here or something of the kind if there's degeneration, but then PT or these kinds of stretchings for the lower body. So, but yeah, yeah, it
I
is.
just think we
yeah.
know more about our own body than anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like reluctant to go straight to the guy that did my knee because he's going to look at my other knee, but he won't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to find someone who looks at the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I was, my first symptom was not hip pain. My first symptom was my arm went numb. I mean, like completely numb for quite some time, for like a week. And then I got an adjustment and it got better, but then I'd get neck pain whenever I had my period. And I'm like, well, it might just be hormones. I'm like, then why does it go away when I lay down? And then I went to 3 people and they went, I know you feel it in your neck, but your sacrum has twisted for some reason. And so what's happened now is since I've limped and been pulled askew for 6 years, other muscles took over so I could move, and I've got to, yeah. And so when you have surgery, other muscles start to take over to compensate, which is why it's so interesting to then, like I said, you say, well, let me teach you a stretch for sciatica. Well, understand where the sciatica is coming from first. And do the stretch and figure out which ones work for you. And sometimes, like I said, if it's in the spine and you do stretch and it gets worse, you might then have a serious degeneration or impingement.
Well, since I've been doing this, I haven't had that pain.
Well, then it's muscular.
Great.
Then it's muscular, and then, yeah, just move with it. So,
Your wonderful physical therapist, is she in Anchorage?
yeah, she's over, is it Alaska Spine Clinic? I can message you her name.
Okay, sure.
And, but it's over there by Great Harvest Bread.
Oh,
Yeah, it's in the mall right next door, so.
okay.
Yep. So, and both my PTs, they're women and they're like my age or younger, which I think is great. It makes them very easy to talk to.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to think of anything else. So we did sciatica this week, nerve impingement. Next week, I'm going to go back to that gaze of the tiger lesson that I didn't fully get to teach last week. We kind of got sidetracked. But I'm going to go over nerve impingement of the upper body.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yep. So we did lower, and then we'll do upper, and then we'll go all the way back to breathing again. So,
I'm going to take my papers as I travel.
yes. Yep.
Yeah.